Okay, so let's look at stages of change. It's on page 48 in your participant handbook. The more instruction is in your facilitator book, but for right now, just go to the handout on page 48, and we'll actually walk through this together. As you can see, this is in week 18, and one of the reasons it's at that place is because what we notice is that going through the change process, remember we talked about readiness to change, trying to figure out where they're at. Going through the change process can be very difficult for people. It's difficult for all of us, depending on what it is we're trying to change. And so this is just a model or a picture for us to explain what the process of change looks like. It's actually based on, kind of inspired by Virginia Satir. She's a therapist from way long ago. Anyway, so let's look at, okay, what she starts with is what she calls the status quo. And that's just normal. That's just, we're normal, going along, life is happening. And something happens, and she refers to it, as the change agent. I put the wrong thing down. Okay, the change agent is something that happens to us. And what I want us to understand is that it can be positive or negative. So, for example, having a new baby. Basically a positive for most people. Having to come to our groups, positive or negative. Kind of depends on where they're at in the readiness to change. But for many of them, that can be a negative, having to come to group. So you can choose anything you want as an example. You can actually ask the group if there's something particular they want to use. I tend to use the group itself, just having to come to group. That was a change agent. All of a sudden, your life just got changed. You're having to go to something you did not have to go to before. You may be having to pay for it or not. That can be another issue. And you're having to take 2 hours out of your week. For our groups are 2-hour groups. So you've got 2 hours, possibly 3 hours, because you got the travel back and forth. So all of a sudden, you've got something interfering with your schedule. So the change agent brings what she calls chaos. And the chaos can be the thoughts and the feelings that are going on with that change. So let's use your experience with people in your group. Use that as an example. What are some possible things they're telling themselves, maybe some feelings that they're having as they're going through this? Now they have to come to your group. They don't have any support, okay? Okay, so they're thinking, I don't have any support. So their time is affected. Okay? I don't need this. So that might be something they're telling themselves. I don't need this, and we'll put an explanation on it. This won't work. Good. Blaming somebody. My mean probation officer. Okay? And this is really important, too, to recognize. It's actually why I'm an advocate on paying for the programs, at least for the first 90 days. We need to keep them in that chair, and they don't think they need to be there, they don't think it'll work, and they blame somebody else that they have to be there. If we can remove the financial barrier, what I have found is at least it gets them in the door so we can begin to engage them. They don't have to pay for it, they just simply have to get there. They can comply with that for the most part. What I have told, I've worked with the CCP a little bit and have told them, a program needs to engage them. By that 90-day mark, the program needs to have engaged them. And at that point, and if they can financially afford it, then remove the financial assistance. But at least get them through the door and get them past that first 90 days of denial and resistance. Because this is exactly what's happening. This is where their head's at. We want to reduce the impact of this as much as possible. So we can show them, we can have fun, right? Have we had fun yet? Has anybody had fun yet? I know y'all laughing. And we've only had, 7 hours together. So So yeah, we want them to see that this can be something enjoyable. You can connect with people that do care about you, but we need to get them through that door first. So very good on this. How about some positives? What are some positives they might have? Let's say they are in that readiness to change. They're at the contemplation, the preparation stage. Well, have some hope. Okay, so maybe hope this works. Good. What else? What was that? Learn new skills. Okay, maybe I can learn something. Good.
Group support.
Get the group support. So I'm not alone in this. There's maybe other people that are going through this.
Feel better about themselves.
Okay. At the back of your facilitator guide are actually some comments that the participants have made after they finish this group, and one of them talks about, I feel better about myself. I feel better about myself as a man. So sometimes you want to borrow those statements to share with the ones who are just coming in. This is what the people say after they finish this program. These are some of the reports that we've gotten from them. So it allows them to see that there is hope, that maybe it can get better. I heard something else.
I'm glad I'm here.
Glad I'm here. When we do the lethality next week, the lesson on that, one of the things that is amazing for the men is it scares them because they realize how close they are to being lethal in their relationships. Never thought about it being that close. So there is a sense of, oh, I guess I'm in the right place after all. Need some help. Any other thoughts?
Look at it as their time, me time.
Oh, okay. So this is get me out of the house time. And actually, as the men begin to bond with each other, that does become some me time. They actually do look forward to coming and seeing each other, and you guys see that with your groups. Okay, so let's go into the next section. We've got the chaos, and then we are now moving into the energy cycle. I didn't realize it had been a while since I drew this. Now, the reason I put this in red is this is the hard part. This is the hard part. In the energy cycle, anytime we learn to do something new, it takes a lot of energy. Okay? So, for example, learning to brush your teeth. I imagine when you were real little, or those of you that have small children, you know you have to teach them and you have to remind them all the time. Okay? So, as a child, we were reminded. How many of you had your mother call you today to remind you to brush your teeth before you came to class? Not? Did you remember all by yourself? Okay, here's the deal. When we start off, it takes a lot of energy. When you were 2 years old, it took a lot of energy to brush your teeth. Now, you don't even give it a second thought. In fact, that is the new status quo. You're now somebody who just does that as a matter of course. When people come into our groups, it is really hard to learn all the changes that we're going to talk about and all the things we're touching on. So while it may be interesting and they may have hope and they may think it's pretty cool, they also deal with things like no support. So what are some, and this is what happens when people drop out of the energy cycle. It just gets to be too much of a hassle and too much trouble, and they go back to where they are. Those of you that are working with victims of domestic violence, you see that. It gets too hard to try to live out on their own. Lorena, you know this from working all the, with the shelter and the groups and all the stuff you did. It becomes too hard, doesn't it? Too much hassle. It's just easier to go back to the abuser. And so we want to recognize that this exists. We want to help prepare them that these are some problems that can happen, and we want to brainstorm what are some ways you can put a stop gap, if you will, so that you don't go back, so that you return to doing the classes. What are some of the barriers you find with your clients in being able to finish your program? Time, okay. Good. Okay, so the hours they interfere? Transportation. Okay. The money? Good.
Fear.
Fear? Yeah. sometimes just fear of change, fear of doing something different.
Because in my case, out there is the support there. Support where some of the staff out there, not our staff, but the other staff,
Right?
they're like, well, you know, they're telling them negative things and you're gonna be a loser, and I'm like, you're gonna make them go to my class already trained and not wanting to be there?
Right. Which puts more pressure on you then to make sure that group is engaging so they do want to be there. That becomes their me time. That becomes their safe place. We as facilitators need to recognize these things happen. We can't really successfully run groups being in a vacuum, believing, well, it's us or nothing, you know, or jail or whatever. So I know with Garden Pathways, you guys have lots of services and connections with, you know, with Flood. At one point, you used to actually be in the same building together. But these are things that we need to be aware of when we're working with our clients, so that we can at least be aware of resources and services. Remember, our goal is to keep them in our program because we know we can change behavior. We know we can make those changes. And that may mean we have to look outside of our program to see where are the other resources that we can connect with, that we can refer somebody to. You know, at one point, we had bus passes. That was part of our grant when we did the free program. So we not only removed the financial barrier, but we also helped with the transportation. We let them ride their bikes and bring their bikes inside the room, so they could just park them in the back corner. That way they didn't have to worry about walking out and having their bike stolen. So any of those things we can do to help reduce the barriers is more likely to lead to successful outcomes. When we did the pilot project, we graduated 68%. 68% is twice the local average, and from what I'm reading now, twice the national average. So, you know, obviously we did all this material so that the men enjoyed the program, but we also helped them with those barriers so that they could stay and they could try to finish. Here's the benefit to the work you do, especially with domestic violence. The work that, with that pilot project, we saw 70% of the graduates who have not been arrested for anything in 18 months since they graduated. It's amazing. But here's the difference. So we had 70% not arrested. The ones who didn't graduate, 75% have been arrested. That was actually 11 men. Of the 11, 5 went to prison, 2 got felony probation, and 3 picked up new domestic violence charges. So where are we spending our money? Are we spending it here, or are we going to spend it here? Because we're spending it one way or the other. So do you see, this is something that I think is gathering some momentum, is to look at funding. So it's, you know, it's really encouraging to see those numbers, and it's encouraging, I think, right now our jail says it costs $85 a day to lock somebody up. Most of our programs are running, what, about $1,200 maybe? $1,200 a month, I think. I mean, $1,200 a year. And I figured if you stuck somebody in jail for a little over a week because they didn't complete the program, and then you come to find out they didn't complete it because they couldn't afford it and they couldn't get transportation, you just paid for half of that. You just paid for 6 months of the program for 1 week in jail. It's like, you know, we're spending the money anyway, so why? And if we can get them to not pick up new domestic violence, in fact, not pick up any new charges, you know, there were no new cases. So, in the studies that have been done nationwide, there's not a lot that's been done, but what has been done has shown, again, if they get, they've done 15-month recidivism and looked at significant reduction in new crimes if they've completed even just 3 months. So we had them for a full year. Yeah, so I think it's important for the work that you're doing that we make sure we get people to stay in that chair and we help them with some of these resources and look at what's out there. Okay, so anyway, any thoughts or questions on this? I'm explaining this one. What we're doing is helping prepare them. You're going to have some challenges, and if you'll let us know what those challenges are, we might be able to get you some resources or get you some help. And like I said, we had bus passes for a little bit. What I found, and this is just something so people don't manipulate, we didn't just offer up and go, hey, we have bus passes, you know. But if somebody came to us and said, I really want to come to class, but I can't make it all the time because my ride isn't always dependable, then I would ask, if we got you a bus pass, would that make it easier for you to be able to get to class? So usually they had to express the need first, and then we would go ahead and offer that. Okay, here's your work for this next week. When you come back next week, we're going to do the lethality class, or lethality section, and I'm going to teach you how to teach to a video clip. We don't show movies to entertain. Movies are simply to allow us to be able to illustrate behaviors and things that we want to teach. So I will teach you that, and then you guys will be on deck, and each of you will get 7 to 10 minutes, and I would like you to walk us through an activity somewhat like what you've seen here today. So I want you to take either something you're currently doing in your own program that you can now turn it, instead of a lecture, turn it into an activity. How would you get the participants actually acting or involved in it rather than you standing there and talking to them or telling them about it? So think about, you can use the flip charts, you can use the little flashcards that we just did. You can do a team building exercise. There's one I do for when I teach 3 different agencies who are now working together. I found a really cute exercise where they use pennies, and they have to come up with a certain configuration with those pennies, and they have to work together on that. So you can do any type of icebreaker or other activity, but here's what I want you to do. It needs to be goal-oriented. What are you hoping to achieve? In that particular example, I'm trying to get them to work together as a team. Okay, I'm maybe trying to get them to talk with each other, to engage with each other. So you want to look at what is the goal of your activity and what is the topic. So give us the title of your activity. And then what are your learning objectives? And I gave you, this is Bloom's taxonomy, I think it's called. This is actually just, in fact, if you ever do presentations, they're all pretty much going to this now. You have to show what is your objective, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to, and you've got 6 categories on this particular paper. So pick some of these verbs and use that. So participants will work together as a team. Participants, so come up with 1 to 3. Depends on your time. Because you only have a short exercise, you've only got maybe 1, maybe 2 objectives that you're going to get out of it. Then describe the learning activity. So describe the steps needed to accomplish the activity. What do you want the students to do? How much time will be used? Obviously, you're going to have 7 to 10 minute block. What do you want us to do? Are you going to have us number off, into separate groups? Are you going to have us move to a different place of the room? Are you going to have us, turn together and problem solve this activity? What's your activity going to look like? And then what kind of resources are you going to need? Are you going to need pens, paper, tape? And that just helps you with, and you'll notice on the facilitator guide, that's exactly why I put that on there, because you don't want to show up for your group and go, oh man, I forgot to bring the tape, or I forgot my computer, So you want to think about what you need. It doesn't have to be real elaborate. We just want to give you a chance to actually get up front. Think outside of the box. Take something you're currently doing, or you're welcome to take something that's in the book. You're welcome to take an activity that's in the book, because your classmates are now going to grade you using the same grading that you did for me today. Are you able to engage us? Are you able to communicate, what we're doing? It will be a real learning experience if you've never done these learning activities. It's a challenge. I make this look easy now, but this is like years of doing this, so don't think that it's just something you're going to pop up here and do real quick and easy the first time. But it's good to practice. It's good to start thinking about how can I make my activities more interesting and engaging for the client rather than sharing with them how much knowledge I have. So technically, like even the flip chart, I only give you a minute each. So that really, if I have 4 or 5 sheets, that's what, 4 or 5 minutes, 6 minutes. And then you don't have to actually teach all the flip charts. You would just tell us what you would do with that. If you would teach that, or if you've decided, I'm going to have 1 person from each group come up and discuss that, you're welcome to do that. But you'll actually lead us through an activity.